je suis malheureux. Pas ta chagrin, pas ta mélancolie, pas ta chagrin, pas ta mélancolie, pas ta plus loin, ne reviens plus à moi, puisque mon cœur, puisque mon cœur, puisque mon cœur, puisque mon cœur, il ne veut plus de toi.
Well, good afternoon. And to be able to say that is a rarity, because most of our shows are in the evening. If you're looking at me right now, you're watching Divided We Stand on Facebook and YouTube. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, you can find us in the search in YouTube for Divided We Stand. There are a few Divided We Stand channels, but this, of course, is the political channel. So we ask you and invite you to become a part of this group and commiserate with us as we map out how we're going to deal with 4 more years of fascism. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a group page, it's called, appropriately enough, Divided We Stand. And that page, we also ask that you become a member, not a subscriber, but a member. It is a private group, but you'll be approved as long as you're not a Trumper. And even if you are, as long as your behavior is acceptable, we'll be glad to have a conversation. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So today we will have 2 shows. We'll have one obviously now, and we have one at 8 p.m. But more specifically today at 4 p.m. we have a very, very special guest who's more of a co-host than a special guest, because he was the host of Reality Report with me, and though we aren't on the Reality Report anymore, it still exists in some fashion on Facebook, and at least some of the videos are still on YouTube. Paul Maginley has been a good friend of mine ever since college. Paul will be talking to us today via Toledo, Ohio. Like myself, he's a graduate of Bowling Green State University. He's a man of the world. He has lived in Southeast Asia. He lived in Thailand for many years. A successful teacher. He's a wonderful writer, in my opinion. He's very modest, so I'm not so sure what he would say. He's also a nurse. I think he's just recently retired, so it'll be wonderful speaking with my good friend Paul Maginley. And without any further ado, Paul, good to see you again.
Great to be here, Brian. You run a wonderful show. You do a great job, and boy, you certainly built me up.
You deserve it, Paul. In fact, if anything, I was being a bit. It should be even more.
I want to look at this more of a dialogue than an interview. But
that's fine.
I was thinking. You mentioned the fascist administration we're under. Can you think historically any time in America that we had any other administration that came as close to fascism as we are facing now? I mean, I certainly can't.
Well, I can say this: we know that there were presidents who were in office at the time of the robber barons. The McKinleys, and before even that, So they were always at the behest of the very, very
Right.
wealthy. But we never had this type of banter going about from a party, which is not even a party. It's a coup. It's a fascist movement. We have talked about this coup for the last 10 years or 8 years, at least somewhere near there. But this is different. This is something that is quite remarkable in a negative way. You can look back in our history of our country, and we've had poor presidents and those who could be accused of being perhaps anti-American or anti-middle class. But this is something different. This is a hateful regime, and I mean that in every bit of the word. And it's got me more and more worried because of the fact that you have all these sycophants behind him. And I wanted to pick your brain, and you can pick mine, whatever you would like. And I know, Paul, you're not a very political guy, but this individual, Donald Trump, has gotten you so
Oh
angry.
yeah. Yes, I've
What
never
makes it different to you?
I can't recall another administration that's made me as angry as that. I mean, given our age, of course, the closest would probably be Nixon.
Mhm.
Um, Reagan, of course, his policies moved this country vastly towards the right, and we're still suffering. And we suffered for decades, really, under
Kind of
his
the
legacy.
start of it.
And Nixon, I mean, he was brought down under ignominious circumstances, but he did a lot of good too. I mean, his foreign policy was fantastic. I think in the past, um, yes, we certainly had presidents who were corrupt. Absolutely agree with you. Um, there was a Tammany Hall period too,
Hmm.
and for example. But I think those presidents still had some sense of statecraft and ideology. Right now, we've got someone who has zero ideology, zero statecraft, and it's all about lining his pockets, the pockets of his family, who are strangely rather absent from the public eye right now. I
Hmm.
mean, the first go round for Mr. Donald was he had his family involved. This time, I think they're just all making money.
Correct.
With
Although
with with
we are hearing that Donald Jr. wants to run for president in four
in the
years.
future, I guess.
Right.
Okay, so
It can get worse, right?
yeah, I don't know if he's got his dad's charisma. I mean, his dad does. We have to admit, Brian, it's an
He has his
evil type
idiocy,
of
that's for
charisma.
sure. Mm.
And I think there's a couple of things we can't deny. One, no matter our feelings about him, he is probably the most influential politician in America since Reagan. That's one.
Absolutely.
Two, there's an evil type of charisma. I think that he has, and he's mesmerized. Middle class. I mean, middle aged white America, male America, with a sprinkling of females and Latinos and whatever he did to get elected. It still blows my mind that he managed to make it. But I've never been as angry, Brian. And I'll start with that State of the Union. I don't know
Sure.
how long did you last with that?
I lasted 15 minutes and it had to go
Yeah,
off. Couldn't
it was
take
about
any more.
15 for me too. It was
Right.
about 15 for me too. I mean, he starts off with a few lies, and then his constituents, I mean, the Republican side, get up and start chanting
Right.
USA, USA, and then that clown behind him,
Co-opting the 1980 Olympic hockey
someone
game.
who someone once said had the most punchable face he could he could ever imagine.
Yeah,
But,
that's
I mean, there's JD Vance, which is his a punchable face would bounce up and down,
right.
and
And he was
cheer
always
him.
looking for somebody to pick out of the crowd to try to get him arrested or something. Where's the sergeant in arms? Get that person away.
We laugh, but my God, the damage and the lie. I just couldn't take it, and I believe Bernie walked out, and of course, the congressman from Texas,
Green, right?
Green. He showed, I think, some courage in
Right.
trying to interdict the bullshit,
Right.
the propaganda. What is he going to do? Um, Before I go any further, I just want to let everybody know in chat. I'm not typing on there. I don't know how, but I do recognize what you're saying, and I appreciate your thoughts
I'm
and
hoping that
comments.
you can see the chat as it moves along. I can post these like right here. Uh,
Sure,
we-
it's
So
fine.
if this is sufficient, and that will work.
Now, so what is Trump doing right now? The only thing I've seen him do really is it's just an open attempt at making money personally and for his family.
You think that's the limit? Do you have any suspicion that he's an asset for Russia? Because it does seem like he's already willing to negotiate for Putin
Yeah,
too. You know,
I don't think Putin has anything on him specifically. I mean, I can't imagine a quid pro quo working like this. Hey, Vladimir, I know you got shit on me, and I'm going to do you a solid here. And I can't see it working that way. I think it's okay. My view is that Trump is thriving in a world where might makes right. He's going to side with Russia and going to countenance the takeover of Ukraine. He's going to side with, and he has, Israel and the total destruction of Gaza, meaning not necessarily that Israel will take it over, but that the Gazans don't return. He's going to probably hold back on any kind of defense of Taiwan. So even though we've got a so-called trade differences with China, I believe when it comes to taking over Taiwan, he would allow it. He would allow it without
really.
any kind of military intervention. And I think it's almost like, okay, you guys grab that because we're in the group of the powerful here, and I'll grab Greenland. And oh, by the way, for the EU, guess what? I'm not supporting NATO. NATO will collapse on their own, and
Right.
maybe even the whole concept of the European Union. I mean, think about this, Brian. This is historical. I mean, I think NATO is in deep trouble.
I agree,
And
100%.
so that this entity that was formed out of the destruction of World War II and in response to the threat of the Soviet Union, very historical. It lasted
It's a new
how many
world
years?
order as far as we know.
Lasted how many years? And it's under existential threat right now. I mean, big time. And I think the EU itself is 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 struggling. I mean, it struggles under several things. For one thing, it's got 28 members. They're disparate. Turkey, for example, won't agree with Sweden.
Right.
You've got Czechoslovakia. Each of these 28 members have veto power. Okay? That means you're not getting crap done. I mean, that means you really got to walk on eggshells to get anything done.
Right.
You know, think of India, for example. India basically is a country of 28 different states, and but these states don't have veto power, individual veto power. So Modi can kind of dominate it a bit. Now look at the EU. So I think the EU, as it stands, is under existential crisis right now, along with NATO, which is its defense treaty. I mean, the only two nuclear powers is France and UK, both badly outnumbered as far as nuclear capacity
Right.
with Russia.
And they don't have a lot of geography in either country.
And in the UK's case, it's very much intertwined
Right.
with
They're dead
America's
ducks.
nuclear. Yeah. So
I mean, they'll hit back if it ever happened. They will.
yeah,
They'll hit Moscow. They will
think
hit them.
yeah,
But
their nuclear capacity is submarines,
mhm,
whereas I think France has the only surface vessels. But in the meantime, Ukraine is very much dependent on us for the Starlink, their
right,
communications
that's done.
uh, in the defense. And here's Trump. You notice that when he froze support or held it, Russia then launched all these missiles into
Right.
Ukraine.
And successfully in comparison to the past, where 2 or 3 would get in, now 22 get in.
Yeah. Now Ukraine will find a way to survive and probably get arms from Europe, and so on. They've got a crisis with manpower because many of the fighting age people are. I mean, they lost a lot of young people through emigration.
Paul, can I
When
interrupt you for a second because you were mentioning Starlink, because the United States was giving, obviously intelligence
yes,
the to the Ukrainians.
yes, big time. They
Do you
depend on
think it's
that.
beyond the realm of guessing that perhaps Trump would actually give information to the Russians about key areas in Ukraine?
Never thought about it, Brian. I don't
Hmm.
know. I
That's what
don't know.
worries me,
But
because he's trying to put the screws to Ukraine and put incredible pressure on them.
but Brian, there's some symbiosis here because Ukraine has the most advanced drone technology in the world,
Yes,
and our
at least
military,
military drone technology. Yes.
yeah, and our military benefits from the shared intelligence on that, the shared technology. Because after all, today's battles, the drones are replacing a lot of hardware.
Right.
Big,
It will
heavy.
it will replace the soldiers at some point very soon.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the battle means of the future. So our own military stands to that will be a setback of some sort. So, but I think that foreign policy has been a disaster. Obviously, you feel the same way. I mean,
Absolutely.
and so I don't think Putin has anything necessarily personal. And Trump doesn't care. I mean, what are you going to show a picture of him in an uncomfortable position with a woman? He doesn't give a.
Doesn't care about that, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking in terms of the fact that if it's, see, I personally don't think that the Steele dossier was that off. I mean, you can't really tell because you have intelligence officers,
Mhm.
and not all of the time is the information correct, but it just is interesting because I think if we just base it on what Robert Mueller said, I mean, he basically kind of left it for Congress to try to deal with, and they weren't going to deal with it, as they didn't, at least not the Republicans. So I think there was more, and the fact that you had Bill Barr there to help him out, I really do think there is a Russian connection. I've said this all along. I could be wrong,
Could
but
this hurt him as president, though? Necessarily? I mean, the guy seems like Teflon. I mean,
well,
he's
that this is the thing that gets me
wild
angry, Paul,
president. Wild
and
president.
and you mentioned it very quickly. But you mentioned it when you watched it, and you watched the rest of them chanting "USA, USA." These sycophants, and I've seen this type of crowd. I mean, we've all seen this type of crowd behavior. How
It's
people
frightening.
change when they're within crowds, and they
Mhm.
act
Mhm.
they
It's the
act out in
same
ways.
unison. It's the same unison that started and supported lynching against Black Americans.
Mhm.
It's the same ugly crowd that brings down the forces of light. I mean, it's scary. It's scary.
It's a
All crowds are
frenzy.
scary
This
like that.
country's going through a frenzy, and or at least half the country. And this is what scares me because now he's got the military behind. He's essentially, if you think about it, the Russian model is control the media, control the courts, control your politicians, control the military. If you've got that, and of course, control the electricity and the water, you've got everything.
All of which he's striving to do.
Exactly, and that's the point. Is that you can see where he's going with this. He was always worried when Biden was president because Biden was the commander in chief, and now he's not, and he's trying to get all these generals who may go against him. They don't even have Kelly there or
It's all about
Milley.
personal loyalty with him. It's
Right,
all about personal loyalty. It's not what you believe in, or none of that matters.
which is why
Every-
you look at the lack of talent. You say, well, why would Linda McMahon be hired for the Department
Right.
of Education? You can see him actually just destroying the entire country. And again,
All in-
that's kind of obvious. We can see that clearly. But what bothers me is there's no point at which somebody says no mas. I can't go for this. Just like with Watergate, that there was a point when the Republicans said this is unacceptable. January
Right.
6th wasn't acceptable
Right.
enough. It looked like they were starting to go in that direction, and then
Mhm.
he put the pressure. And then the fact that he was able to hold on for 4 years, not
Mhm.
knowing whether he was going to get in or not. I'm talking about his
Yeah, the last
cronies.
time I was on the show, I mentioned I thought that the old traditional Reagan Republicans would at some point give some pushback, and I think the Supreme Court will give some pushback because they see their own powers waning or being,
Yeah, well, they
usurped.
do that at the expense of threats from Trump. I mean, even Coney Barrett is facing. I mean, I'm not giving her any credit, but she did go against him in one
Yes,
ruling,
yes,
and they're
yes.
all after her now.
He and Kavanaugh get along really well, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that they will start pushing back once they
But do
see.
you see John Roberts? John Roberts is the last guy to push back. He's such a phony.
And well,
He's
I'm just
just like
thinking,
Lidum.
they're very, I would imagine, covetous of their. They want to maintain their powers, and we know what Trump's about. Trump wants to have the other two branches of government subordinate to his.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear. And as you said, put his loyalists in running the military, running the media, running everything. I mean, it's definitely a frightening time. But I think another thing that really bothered me, Brian, about the State of the Union was the anti-immigrant rhetoric. Um, I must tell everybody, if you don't know already, my whole family are immigrants. We're first generation immigrants. I mean, my sisters, my parents, both deceased, my own daughter, my wife, me, first generation immigrants. And I know he even at one point, he's backed off it, of course, but he threatened to rescind this automatic citizenship um, that people earn from being born in America or um,
Birthright.
yeah, birthright. Now, okay, if we all look back, we're all immigrants. I mean, and I'm not talking about going back to Native American Indians, okay? I'm talking about most of us. Look at your own family, Brian. I'm
Right.
sure that they came from either Russia or Europe after, say, 1900.
Well, on my mother's side, it was in the 1800s. I mean, deep into
Okay.
the 1800s. That isn't
Most, most white Americans, including all those MAGA fucks, right,
right.
are relative newcomers. Um, yeah, there's descendants of the Mayflower, okay? Okay, a handful, all right?
Right.
The majority of Americans, white Americans, came in post Civil War.
Right.
You know who the real native ethnic Americans are? Blacks.
Right, because they've
They,
been there right from the beginning. It's
because
the
they
most
were
ironic
here.
thing. I think
They were
always
here.
telling people to go back. What are you talking about? You go back.
The real Americans, I mean,
Right.
besides Native Americans, which are obvious, right? Are
Right.
Black Americans. I mean, they've been here
Right.
before
They've been here
1822.
right from the beginning.
Was banned in 1822. So there was no legal importation of slaves after 1822. How many white Americans can claim their ancestry in America prior to 1822?
Right. You
Not
can't.
many,
You can't.
Brian. Not many,
Right.
right? So, in other words, Trump and shut the fuck up about immigration, okay? Because we all are, you know. And I'm so upset about that, Brian. I mean, because yeah, you can say undocks and so on, but really it's an anti-immigration.
And are they, Paul? Are they really doing anything? We've discussed this before. It could be just as simple as saying a business cannot hire somebody unless they produce a Social Security card. They could have done it. I don't even think that the case is that he wants immigrants out. He wants to put on the show, just like the tariffs. I'll put on a tariff, and the next day I'll take it off. He's left and right, up and down. You remember this song from the Yardbirds, Over Under Sideways Down? I mean, he's just everywhere. There's no sense to what he does aside from the fact he's creating
It's a
chaos.
pure family money grab. Let me explain this a little bit, okay? So he forms that. We know he formed those bitcoins,
Right.
the what do you call it, Trump coin and Melania coin and Barron coin or whatever. So they got in early, and of course the thing collapses once it becomes open for trading to the public, right?
Right.
So they make a big money grab on that. Now they probably bought in again, and then he announces that nationally we're going to have some kind of reserve in digital currencies. I mean, it's pure manipulation. Another example would be he tells Donald Jr. and his family and his close friends, "Hey, I'm going to announce some tariffs on Argentinian beef, say, for example. Go ahead and buy the beef futures. Or what do we get from Canada? Lumber or whatever.
Right.
And you buy it up." And then he announces it. And then 2 days later, after they sell out, then he rescinds it. Says, "No, we're going to delay it a month." This is
So it's
pure
essentially
manipulation.
it's a form of insider trading,
Yes,
beginning
yes,
doing it
yes,
illegally.
yes. The guy
Right.
who can't make it in business, has to game the system.
Right.
I'm telling you, Brian, he's doing this again and again. I think that's what his focus on, certainly through the first month plus of his presidency, has all been about personal gain. It's all been about personal gain, and when he was talking about Greenland, they probably loaded up on lithium and cobalt and nickel and futures and all that. Believe me, he's doing it. He and his family. It's all about a money grab right now. Where's the ideology? And he just lets Musk go on about cutting.
But again, Paul, we know he's all of that and more. But the fact that 1/3 of this country would latch onto that thinking, do they? And I've said this to Dave, but I'm going to allude to this, but do they hate us so much that they're willing to have anything because they despise what they consider the woke populace of the United States? It's like they're against science, they're against intelligence.
Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's doing that for his fan base. What does his fan base want, right? This group of middle-aged white males. What do you think they want? What they want is their historical animus towards helping Black Americans out, right? Anything you can do to screw them, they'll support, right?
Right.
Second, all this, supposed hordes of transgender that are trying to get into women's sports, bullshit like this, the whole LGBTQ thing. No, it's all that bullshit is just to support his fan base. That's all it is. And what does he really want to do? He really just wants to line the pockets.
Is it? I mean, he is a narcissist. I think you'd agree on that, correct?
Big time.
Well, part of it too is the position itself fills a void for him because it's the #1 CEO position in the world, and that to me makes me feel that from a psychological point of view, he needed to be president because he needed to be boss. He's running this as though this country is Trump Incorporated.
Right. How do you know he didn't need money? I mean, he's not the greatest businessman. He spent
he said all failures.
But this whole you see that MAGA group equates entitlements as just undiluted help for Black Americans. They equate that, and so that's why this Doge thing really resonates with them. Yeah, cut that Medicaid, cut food stamps, cut this, cut that, and then you know what they find out? That their own benefits are being cut.
Right.
Their jobs are being cut because you know what? It was primarily white America that benefited from that.
Right.
And they're finding that out now, which is the greatest irony, right? And whether it's come to Jesus moment or not, I don't know, Brian. I mean, I think some of them are realizing that they were taken, that they were had. I don't know, but I think early on, Trump is out for just personal aggrandizement. And then because he doesn't have much ideology, and I'll give you a good example of this too. So here he's cutting all this stuff, and he puts Musk in charge of that. And then he lets out that he was thinking about issuing a $5,000 Doge savings check for every American, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which in other words, you can see the old charlatan is stuffing some bills in the guy's front pocket while his wallet is being lifted.
Right.
Because that's what's happening. He's lifting the wallet of Americans while just stuffing a few little token bills with the other hand into his front
Meanwhile,
pocket.
we're going to pay taxes through tariffs.
So transparent, Brian. I just can't believe that people don't see this. His supporters.
Well,
Um,
this is well, we've talked about this even going back to college, Paul. And that's a long time ago. But we know that ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is violence, and it just shows you just how many ignorant people. Now, a lot of people would beg to differ and say, "Okay, we're Republicans. We have the right to vote the way we want." That's true. You have the right to vote the way you want. But if you think that there's no climate change, if you think that Trump is actually going to try to save you money and cut taxes, if you think all of these things, that's the ignorance there. Okay, we can complain about particular candidates, but this guy has been lying since day one. And again, I can't quite figure out if it's the ignorance or it's just the absolute racism and bigotry and prejudice that they have that makes them say, you know what, we're going to take this all the way and we're going to have a covenant with this guy.
well, it's a fearful thing to have undirected grievances, Brian. I mean, this group of people have grievances because they've seen their economic standards decline. Their I guess when you want to say the political powers decline, and they are this is their way of retaliating. It's a blind retaliation, and what's uglier than undirected, misdirected, right, retaliation? What's uglier than that?
Right.
That's what we're facing with that crowd. But I think the only way, because we got to wait 2 years for the off elections. I think the only way is it's got to be from inside the Republican Party, Brian.
Right, and we've talked about that. That is true. They need to have a fierce battle within, and you're hoping that all these narcissists go at each other, and that probably will happen.
Right now, it's just a money grab. But when they see what happens to Europe, our allies, and Putin, I mean, these Reagan Republicans must be just, they must be throwing up. They must be nauseated by what's going on.
I mean, where do they go? They can't trust us. Even South Korea and Japan. What are they going to do, Paul, with the military? What is our military going to do if we have a problem? Who's going to join the military unless they can have, electronic dogs, as soldiers?
Right.
You're not going to get the people because those Republicans, by the way, those people, the Kyle Rittenhouses of the world, they're not tough. They have the guns, and that's why, because they're cowards. They want to have the ultimate force. But you won't see Kyle Rittenhouse signing up to go to the front lines because he knows that when the other person has the gun, he's not going to do it.
Now, didn't Trump say he was pulling out of Germany, the troops out of Germany?
Yes. I think he said he was going to take 50,000 troops out of Germany, or 23,000 or 50, whatever it is. He's going to take thousands and thousands, tens of thousands.
Well, I hope Doge will look at some savings from the military reduction. If they're going to take these people out of their stations in South Korea,
but see, why are they, again? You're right. They're going to save money because the military budget is such a large part.
Loaded.
Right. But the question is, because we know he's not for us. It's not like he's a liberal who says we got to cut military spending. My question is, because there has to be some kind of money trail. The fact that they're not putting the money in the military, what are they going to do with it? And why are they doing it?
A grand tax cut for the rich. It's transparent. We know what they're planning. And okay, so in what form did they do that? Well, they said that what is it? They're after what they call it, an external taxation is what they call it, the tariffs. And what are tariffs anyway? Tariffs don't hurt other countries; they hurt your own people. They're punitive to your own people. Okay, because the whole point of tariffs is to protect domestic industry.
Right.
But if the domestic industry is nascent or non-existent, it's just pure punishment.
Right.
For your own people. I mean, if you are importing an essential product and there is no matching domestic market, then it's just a pure tax on the importers. That's it.
Right.
Because, you might end up importing a little bit less, but if that's the only source...
Right. You said if it's a nascent industry, like Russia, Paul, was the one that said, okay, well, we'll do it all on our own right now. Well, that's easier said than done.
And
to
this
all of a
whole thing
sudden
about
replace these
and
items.
this, I was talking to some Trumpster, and she said, "Oh, people don't understand the tariffs. They're reciprocal. These are reciprocal taxes. So tariffs. Canada has tariffs, and this. No, it's not the same thing. For example, Canada may have a small, let's say, I'm making just for an example, their beef industries like 89 million a year that they make out of that. And so they put a tariff on that to try and get that built up. I mean, but from a U.S. trade imbalance standpoint, that's nothing. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. If you if you're I mean, you just can't have it just blanket, just a blanket matching like that. You've got to pick and choose industries that do have a chance of. And then of course many of our supply chains are so complicated,
Right.
especially with our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, that
Absolutely.
you can't really have tariffs on that. It's just a pure inflationary, punitive domestic
And
tax.
by
That's
the
what
way,
it is.
Paul, when Trump was talking about fentanyl coming in from Canada, first of all, the only drug bust they have is 40 pounds of fentanyl, and there's a lot more fentanyl going in the opposite direction. So that is a ruse. I mean, there's it's got to be more than again. It seems as though everything he's doing, and I think it was Senator Merkley who brought this up. If you look at like five of the major things that he's done, we're talking about Trump now, you
Hmm.
would think that he was a Russian asset because everything he's doing is to the benefit of Russia. Russia's not, he said, well, Russia's winning the war now, Ukraine's losing the war. Well, that's not really the case. I mean, they're still holding on to Kursk, um, and you certainly can't believe Trump. Ukraine's was holding their own. Now, what will happen now? I don't know.
Well,
But he lies on everything.
back to this fentanyl thing, okay?
Hmm.
Those carriers are not stupid, They put it inside tires. They put them inside even burritos. I mean, the whole point is you can beef up the security. You could add 1,500 men, like Sondheim has added, X number of agents. I mean, shit's still going to get through, Brian. They're very, very clever.
We
They don't
know
just
that.
come.
So why
Oh,
is he doing it though? Why? I don't see him caring about fentanyl, especially if it's only
good
40
point.
pounds.
Yeah,
What is he doing that for?
yeah.
Can you speculate on why he's doing this to Canada?
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was wondering why that was an issue for him. I don't know. I
That
don't
is,
know.
first of all, that is probably the friendliest country one could ever find. A
I
great
know.
neighbor, decent people, honest people, liberal people. But he does not like Canada. And he certainly is kind of doing the same thing to Mexico. But you notice he did back away when the stock market, lost 700 points. So the
Well, he
pressure's
probably
on
had his
him.
folks buying back in at that time. I mean, that's all this. 'Cause look, he's in a unique situation where he can really control financial markets, Brian, and
Right.
he'll do it. And he'll do it until the financial markets get wise
But we're
about it.
going to have to suffer this roller coaster each day for 4 years.
Well, the markets eventually get wise to it. If he keeps vacillating back and forth, they'll wise up
They'll,
eventually.
they'll
But
figure out, that this
yeah,
is a
they'll figure it
preemptive
out.
thing. Okay.
Yeah, but in the meantime, he and his family are going to make out like bandits, which is what he is.
This
Um,
is,
but
but
I
beyond
get.
that, Paul, the idea of fascism, I understand what you're saying. You're angry with him. It's a play for money. But more than that, he would not care if this country became fascist because then it allows him to be dictator, which
Right.
essentially he is right now.
Well, isn't he for increasing policing powers and
Yeah,
and
well,
so on?
that's what Judy Washington was kind of mentioning. He may want to use like martial law to go after people. You
Mhm.
know,
He doesn't
he's
mind if
he's
domestic.
scared too. Remember when we had the Black Lives Matter protest, which was a very peaceful protest? What did he do? He went down the bunker, and then when that was reported, he was furious that people reported on that because he doesn't want to come off as somebody who's afraid. But
Trump.
yeah,
Yeah, I think he both likes and dislikes being president. He likes the part where the ego part, Brian,
mhm,
the
right.
ego
I'm number
benefits,
one.
egotistic benefit. But what he hates is being bothered about shit that doesn't have to do with making money. It's ideological intricacies that he couldn't care less about. Like his
Hmm.
his intelligence people come up and say, "Oh, this is going on here." Oh, leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. There's
Right,
no money
right.
to be made on that. I mean, I guess everybody has parts of their job they hate, but um, I don't know.
Well, again,
I
that begs the question, Paul, that I give to you is that he does these type of things. You would think the average person would be keen enough to be able to understand that this is a big problem. You don't want somebody heading a government. I don't care which party you are, or any party for that matter.
Mhm,
When you
mhm.
have somebody who behaves like a child, like you say, he doesn't want to have to deal with intelligence
Well, the
reports.
Democratic side already knows this, Brian. It has to come from his party again. I mean, all we need is a few apostates, right? I
Right?
mean, you've got the two women, right? Alaska and Maine. I'm not an expert on
Murkowski and Collins.
but surely, you're going to have some more conservative types, more
Well, doesn't he put more
traditional.
pressure on them now because he does try to intimidate?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Trying. I don't
Strong
know. I
arm
mean,
Murkowski. Those who say are most likely to be an apostate. He's cunning because he does know that he wants to solidify his base. He doesn't want to have anybody going against him.
I mean, Mitt Romney went against him. His
Right. Well,
former,
Mike Pence went against him, and look what happened. They wanted to kill him.
yeah, his
It meant
former.
nothing to him.
I mean, people will show up. There's got to be some honorable conservatives in the
I don't
Congress.
know, Paul. I don't. I think that they have all left. The Kinzigers and the what was it? What's her name? Cheney, Liz Cheney. It's pretty much separate
Oh,
right
she
now.
got harassed. Oh my gosh,
Right.
Liz
But
Cheney.
but thinking about like the Marco Rubios, I don't see Marco Rubio or
Oh,
Ted
he's not very
Cruz,
happy though, Brian.
Matt
He does
Gates.
not look very happy. Do you think Marco Rubio looks happy in his?
Well,
I wonder how long he's
he's
going to put up with this.
well, no, unless he's humiliated in some way, I think he will just be what he is, a coward. He's a coward. He's
So
like
far,
Kyle
yeah.
Rittenhouse and Trump and the rest of them. It's just these type of people, and they have to have the ultimate strength. They have to have the gun where you have the knife. That's what they want. They want the advantage.
Hey,
And
Antonio, nice of
and
you to join us. Nice of you to join us,
yes,
Antonio.
Antonio.
And yeah, I don't know. I have never again been so angry at
You've
our
earned it.
leadership.
You've earned it.
And I don't know. I'm just hoping that eventually the internal dissent kicks in, and we might get in the Supreme Court, Brian. I mean, they are not going to like their powers curbed. They're not going to like
Right.
it.
In that sense, I agree with you that because they do have their own, I don't want to say ego, but they have this idea that they are the Supreme Court. They
Mhm.
should be allowed to do what they're
They
doing.
know what their job is, right?
Right. But on the other hand, these are basically handpicked Supreme Court members from the Heritage Foundation. You've got um, Alito. They're not even really judges. So I would not be surprised if the majority of them still went against the Constitution and let him become immune. Because look, John Roberts gave him immunity.
What about Congress, Brian? Because he's usurping their powers as well with these tariffs. I mean,
Right. I
they're
mean, look, they're subordinate to him.
we're
That's
typical
exactly what
free here,
he wants.
you know. I
He'll
mean,
he'll throw them a bone. He'll say, look, we saw the fires in South Carolina. He's not going to give money for California. He's going to say they're not raking their leaves in the forest and whatnot. But when it comes to South Carolina, they'll get the money. And I think that perhaps some states like New Jersey, California, New York will have to say, if we're not going to get our money's worth, which we don't anyway, we're not going to pay federal taxes. I mean, at some point, something has to happen because what he's again, people would say, well, that's a little bit severe, Brian. We really can't do that. But if you actually think and you look what's going on, look, if your father were alive today or my father were alive today, I don't even know that a word would come out of their mouths. They'd probably just look and say,
yeah,
what?
what's happened? Yeah,
What's
what's
happened,
happened?
right? Because my father would turn off
Hmm.
George Bush. I mean, uh,
Yeah,
George,
yeah,
W.
someone
Bush. Yeah, I
probably
can't
just
look at him.
mild like that. Yeah.
Right. And now you have Trump, yeah, I would agree with if this is Antonio. Antonio, I would agree with him completely on this. I think when you have Alito, I can't see John Roberts. John Roberts didn't show any type of seminal strength when the time came. Just like Merrick Garland, I'm glad he didn't become a Supreme Court member. But you have Gorsuch. He's another one. I think that this is an all-out coup at every single level. I think what you're saying is that perhaps the Supreme Court will come through, and because they want to be the Supreme Court, that you've got to let them do that. Now, Amy Barrett did do that, and I'm not giving her much credit.
And it's fairly early too, Brian. Give it some time because this Trump's not going to let up. I mean,
no, he's not, and maybe we're going to find out quickly what the Supreme Court has to do, because he needs the Supreme Court to stay out of trouble. Mm-hmm. But some of these things are just so black and white that you would expect the Supreme Court to.
Up at some point.
But again, this is a new world, and I don't know. I think with intimidation, maybe they have to see. We remember, what was it, May 4th and 70 when they had Kent State, and when that happened, that changed America's view of Vietnam. I mean, because of the visual of Governor Rhodes from the great state of Ohio shooting, allowing the shooting of citizens.
What, 71, right?
I thought it was 70, but you could be right.
I don't.
Somebody out there can fact check us on that, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that was the change.
Yeah,
of perception.
Well, yeah.
Now, if a Republican gets intimidated and they off somebody, and I could see somebody doing that, because in Russia, one of the ways they deal with it, in fact, somebody just went out of a window a few days ago, so they go out windows.
Brian, you mentioned red and blue states, and so I saw on social media today that there's an outbreak of measles in Texas, red state, right?
Right, big outbreak, absolutely.
And so, the Economist, an article in the Economist said that you need 95% vaccination,
herd immunity,
to achieve herd immunity, and that nationally would fall into 93%. And now look what's happening in Texas, which is a red state. You can imagine there's a greater movement against vaccination there. There we go, folks. You're against your vaccination. We had eradicated measles. Right. It was one of the diseases that had been eradicated.
And essentially polio, too. Wait till that comes back.
Oh, yeah. Polio's gone.
Yeah. Who the hell wants to be in an iron lung for the rest of their life?
Brian, smallpox. Smallpox, which wiped out the Native Americans in America. I mean, we had wiped that out, So, oh my gosh, look at what's happening as a result of ignorance.
Right. People are dying.
You don't play with this.
And the poor are going to die. For example, if you look at the average age of death, especially for African Americans, but for the poor in general, like 8 to 10 years less living. So they're actually killing you slowly, but they're killing you. They're giving you less. In fact, in Russia, the average male lives to be, I think, 64, 66. We'd be gone, Paul.
Hey, Brian, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Is there any way we could add Antonio to the broadcast? Antonio, you
I'll send a link. Antonio, all you have to do is, I have to be a moderator here. Let me see. I have to make myself a moderator. So hold on for a second.
Are you interested, Antonio, joining us for a bit? He really is knowledgeable about these kind of things.
Let me just. I know that I can't put a link in that'll be active.
What's going on?
Unless I'm a moderator, and I have Trev is my moderator. However, I don't think Trev is here today. Trev B5. Let me see here.
Yeah, I didn't see. What was it, Bela Lugosi, whatever?
I mean, I'll put in the link here. Let me see if I can put in the link. And actually, anybody can. Let me see if I can.
I can send it to him through Facebook.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
I'm going to put that there. Antonio, you can try to get that there. If it doesn't show up, let me see if I can make myself
I mean, I don't know what his situation is, but he's watching us. I'm sure he
Let me see.
would like
I
to
should
get
be able to
in.
do it, but again, I don't know that. I don't know that I have privileges on my own site. For Christ's sake, let me see here.
I mean, the link you sent me, Brian, you want me to just send it to
Yeah,
him?
just send that. Anybody else who wants to come on, you're welcome to come on.
Let me
Okay, let me
pass.
see. I can't even see this now. Hold on a second. Please grant access to. I don't know. Is that you? All right. Okay, let me see.
I don't know if he's still watching us, but
That's going to me.
oh, he says he can jump in. Oh, good. I want to know what's
Because I
pissing
don't know
him
what's
off.
going on here with. I see the interview thing coming up. It might be you, but it's
So,
showing
so
my
Brian,
face.
RFK Jr. Came on publicly and urged people to get vaccinated against the measles, I think it was. So,
Right.
um,
He kind of did a Trumpism. He went
he
back and
worked.
forth when he
Yeah,
realized this is getting out of control. Or maybe
yeah,
Cheryl Hines said something to him like,
yeah.
you want to stay married here. You're going to embarrass us here. Get your ass on the line and change.
I mean, the level of ignorance that's running our country is just crazy.
There you
It's
go. And this is what I'm talking about. The whole thing can go down
it's
if we allow
fatal.
this to happen.
Fatal. Ignorance is a fatal condition. Okay, you think cancer is fatal? Ignorance is fatal condition.
Let's see what's going on here. I can jump in. Okay, we'll do it. I don't see you popping up yet, Antonio. So you can.
Maybe he's doing it under my link. I don't know.
The link should be live. I mean, but I don't think I think it can't be live. The link if I am not an administrator of the chat room, and I
And
left
Tony,
that for other people because I can't
I
really get
sent you the
involved. Let's
link
see.
through Facebook Messenger too.
You can
You
do
can try
that.
that.
That'll work.
Yeah, you use the one in
I don't know
Facebook.
where. For God's sakes, this is kind of unexpected. But let me.
I want to talk about Doge too a little bit here.
I don't even like the name Doge. It sounds like
Yeah.
a bad
So should I
pronunciation of
keep yapping
George.
until Tony joins us? Anyway, okay.
Antonio, when you should be able to. There you go. All right, good, Antonio. We're good. Let me put you in. Um, there you go, Antonio. Good to see you.
There you are.
And glad you could join.
Okay, there we go.
And by
Nice
the
to
way,
meet
this
you,
is
buddy.
Antonio Reed, ladies and gentlemen. If you're unfamiliar with Antonio, Antonio used to, I guess, come on shows for the Reality Report, and he's heavily involved in the environmental movement. You can find him on Environmental Coffee House. And by the way, Antonio, what state are you hailing from here?
North Carolina, I'm in
North Carolina.
Winston-Salem.
Okay, very interesting, gerrymandered state.
All
All
right,
right.
Tony. All right, Tony. So we were talking about the Supreme Court. You're not too confident that they're going to put up much resistance to Trump.
No, I'm not. I mean, we just saw this recent Supreme Court decision, which thank God. Um, hold on, I think I got a. There we go. Yeah, so I think the issue was that the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, has been a total. She's not been a total surprise, but she's been the only Trump pick that's kind of disagreed with the court. Alito's completely gone. I have no faith in Thomas, of course. And I mean, sometimes you might get, what's considered a conservative reaction from Justice Chief Roberts, but in whole, the court cannot now be trusted to be a safeguard against the Trump administration. And I think in part because they too don't want to be delegitimized. They don't want to see themselves as directly against the Trump administration and then him directly avoiding one of their decisions.
So what about the Senate? Do you think he'll get Senate resistance at some point? Well,
Um,
Congress. I think the Senate is more conservative. That's why I think more conservative in that they've got the longer terms and they're more Reaganites.
I think that what we're going to have is obvious. Well, what I hope happens, I should say, is that we get a blue wave in the midterms here. And if we get a blue waves in the midterms, I think the Democrats are going to hold some type of resistance against the Republicans. How much of a resistance, that's yet to be said. I mean, still, we're looking at Hakeem Jeffries, unfortunately, in the Congress. We're still looking at Chuck Schumer. So the Democratic leadership hasn't learned anything from 2016, and they've largely remained the same. So that's kind of why we're here. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like, yeah, we could make some gains in terms on the Democrat side during the midterms, but are those gains really going to perpetuate us forward, or are they going to swing the pendulum back further to the right during the next presidential election?
Will
So,
you trust the elections in 2 years, Antonio? I'm not trying to lead you into it, but would you trust the elections in the future?
You know, this game, and I was one, and I called this out during Hillary Clinton when she started making this argument back in 2016 that Donald Trump could possibly corrupt the elections. This is a very important part of our democracy because it hits at the heart of our democracies. If we can't trust our votes, then it really doesn't really matter, right? Then the whole thing is a sham. And now we are, I think, at a point where we can legitimately ask. I mean, we're watching right now some very unprecedented steps being taken by the Trump administration. We're looking at Doge, we're looking at a lot of these executive orders. We're really stepping way outside of what we've seen in terms of normalcy. So I don't want to, fear bait anybody or anything like that, but I think there are significant democratic risks that we run in the upcoming election.
yeah, it's a power push from the PUTSCH. There's a power push on the part of the executive branch.
I'm going to ask both of you. Are you, what level of confidence? I know this gets into conspiracies, and I'm not a conspiracy guy, but the vote really bothered me. Do you believe that the election was on the up and up, and there was no interference from the Republican Party in any way? That's for both of you. So either one of you can chime in on it. I don't know. I'm just suspicious.
I'm suspicious. I gotta admit, I'm suspicious. I thought Trump had no chance. Very suspicious. But I don't know.
It is very difficult to say because there are so many anomalies. With Joe Biden having essentially his mental acuity meltdown on the national stage was very depressing. When I saw that, I became immediately
It was
despondent.
cringeworthy. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
And it's hard to say what level of impact that had on everyday people as they're witnessing this. I mean, talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, you're talking about the Biden administration, which really wasn't delivering on anything that people on the left, at least people that take my sort of position, will want. Right? We weren't getting the type of action we needed on climate. We weren't getting the action
Zero.
we needed on student loans. We had completely dropped the whole healthcare issue by the wayside. And we're in the middle of, I'll be straightforward, I'm wearing my kippah right now. We're in the middle of a genocide in the Gaza Strip. And that was perpetuated by the Biden administration. It was supported by the Biden administration. The Biden
You did get the
administration.
student loan. You did get the student loan forgiveness, at least
And
to
he
some
did
extent.
work with the Paris Accords. So he's definitely better than the Republicans. It's just that, to me, Biden seemed to play this game where he felt that he had to be the president for the Republicans too, and that he bent over backwards for them, and he didn't have to because they were just going to kick him in the ass anyway. I don't understand why the Democratic Party believed that they had to somehow coax the opposing party into thinking that they actually. I mean, why? I mean, what was the use of it? They weren't going to vote for you anyway. Just be tough, and he certainly wasn't tough. And like you said, Antonio, how that started, that was mind-boggling, because you said this is it. I mean, he lost it in the very first question, and that was a shame because I like him as a human being. I think he's a decent guy. But give me 10 minutes. 10. Okay, folks, I only have 10 more minutes left. I hate to really pressure you here, but I got to go do something for my wife there. But
Yeah, well, I want to go over this Doge thing real quick. You know how they're supposedly cutting our budget.
Right.
2/3 of it covers Social Security and health insurance. Okay, another 10% of the debt comes from interest rate payments. So that leaves, I'm not a great mathematician, but that looks like no more than 25% is left for discretionary spending, of which the military is included. So, I mean, Musk can prance about with his electric saw, or all he wants, but it's just for headlines. It's just for headlines and show to appeal to the the Neanderthals, who comprise MAGA. I mean, that's all it is. There's very little you can do from that standpoint. That's why I mentioned if we're taking soldiers out of Germany, South Korea, Japan, and so on, let's put some of that. Let's reduce that defense budget a little bit.
And we're not going to be doing anything like that, and that's why I say this whole agenda that Doge has is mostly propaganda. The idea that they're just going after waste, fraud, and abuse is a complete lie. And you can tell that in some of the departments that it's already take aim at, such as the CPFB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Of course, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the cop that's on the beat in terms of financial regulation. Is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that awarded Americans over $20 billion due to financial scams across the country. It was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that was protecting Wells Fargo's consumers against Wells Fargo when they were engaged in creating fake credit cards, fake bank accounts without their consumers' authorization. And so that was the role of this.
I mean, you had that. And the IRS people they fired were the ones that were directly assigned to corporate cheating, and the rich people, the very wealthy, and those are the ones they cut. And economists pointed out how they had fired 300 nuclear personnel, and they had to quickly scramble to rehire them because they realized, whoops,
Well, actually, it's so serious because you could have another 3 Mile Island because of that.
And Musk talked about, we've saved $7 billion already, not pointing out that quite a bit of it comes from multi-year contracts, which means it's a savings over a period of years. But rather than the headline number they get by telling you right off, we saved X amount, when no, this is going to be spread over years, because it's a multi-year contract. I mean, it's just all bullshit. It's
for people who don't understand this is a classic fox guarding the hen house situation. They're in the Treasury, and they have unfeathered access to all of our civic riches, and they are dismantling any of the agencies that might be investigating, provide safeguards, roadblocks, obstacles to them. They are taking a hacksaw to all of those institutions, those agencies now, and that's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing a public looting of all of the American Commonwealth.
It's not governance, it's just a public looting. That's exactly it. Well put. What do you say, Brian?
Well, I agree. Again, it is a public looting, but again, I don't necessarily come about it from that point of view. I believe that's true. It is a public looting, but again, my major concern is the fascist. I believe we have a fascist government right now. I mean, I don't think people think we're going to have it. We're going to have a constitutional crisis. No, it's here. The question is what will the impact be over time? And I think that, again, he even said, the first day he's going to be a dictator or something like that. Who knows what he gets through? But over the next few months? I guess we're going to find out very, very quickly. But something will have to be done in terms of what we need to do. I mean, we keep waiting for some Democrat to do something, and we're waiting for Merrick Garland. I mean, you could just as easily say that he screwed it up just as much as Biden or the Democratic Party. The guy was, he could have put Trump away a year earlier, and he didn't do it. So the greatest fear I have, the fleecing is going to happen. It is happening. You're absolutely right. But and I don't think you disagree with me that this could become an all-out fascist dictatorship. And then all of a sudden you just have basically three nodes of power in the world. You have China, you have Russia, and you have the United States, and Trump becomes king, essentially. So that's my fear.
This is a very dangerous moment in American politics, American history. There's so many things happen simultaneously. The trade war that the Trump administration has initiated, it stepped up rhetoric against immigrants in the United States. We just had the de facto president, Elon Musk, salute with a Nazi salute to the far right in Germany.
And that was
This-
obvious too, and yet he tried to walk around it saying it was just a movement.
Yeah, so we see that the telltale signs of, you say, is fascism is they're ripe and ready, and even more important than that, go back to the Weimar Republic. What's crucial in the rise of fascism is the weakening, destruction, and failure of liberal democratic institutions. And we certainly are seeing that now in full swing. As I say, I think the main fear that the court has is that it ultimately, you guys were talking, does it want to lose or, cede any of its power? I think the real question here is a question of legitimacy. Rightfully, wrongfully so, the legitimacy of the court's been questioned on the left, but the Republicans under Trump, they're going much further than that. They're openly saying, we're not going to support these courts. We're not going to listen to their decisions. We're going to ignore them. And so I think the Supreme Court is kind of rationalizing, do we want to stand in opposition of Trump, knowing that he's riding this edge, he's pushing us on?
Can they enforce these? The question is, can the Supreme Court enforce their decisions? I don't know.
The only way they would be able to enforce that with the executive going awry is with a supportive legislative branch. But the Republicans have demonstrated that they're going to be, at the very least, at the most, out to lunch on the issue.
Right, and Giuliani hasn't paid anything yet, it seems. So why would anybody else? It's a lawless society, and once you don't have laws, you basically have Russia, because the Supreme Court in Russia is just an arm of the government. So
he's trying to control the media and the military. So he's controlling all the sources of power, or trying to.
Do you gentlemen, because I only have 2 minutes left, but do you gentlemen think that we know that there are billionaires behind the scene and all, but do you think that there are billionaires behind the scene who are actually telling Trump what to do, or is Trump on his own and he's just kind of making everybody in fear?
I think we see exactly what's going on. Elon Musk, the richest man in the history, not just in the United States, in the history of human material wealth, is the de facto president of the United States, and he has created an artificial agency without the authorization of any of our civic powers to essentially regulate the whole of our democracy.
Right.
And what I'm seeing is just money grab. I think the billionaire allies, they see this as a money grab. They're going to grab what they can, and Trump's grabbing what he can. See, you're seeing some kind of ideological force behind Trump, Brian. I don't see that as much. I see it more as
I know. I'm just asking the question. I believe that he is in control.
And I think and he operates
like
through,
Rasputin was in control in the sense that he was ignorant, but he was able to coalesce power.
He does operate through fascist means. Yes, he does. Absolutely.
Listen, I hate cutting you guys off early because I really want to continue with it. Perhaps next week we can do the same thing. Antonio, you're always welcome to come on. But I do have to sign off because Ronnie needs me downstairs. And we're on again at 8 o'clock tonight. folks, if you know, Dave and I will be on. But I will get a hold of you guys again, and we'll do the same thing.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I was with Tony for a while, so great seeing you, Tony.
Yeah, you too, Paul.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you, Antonio.
Thanks for hanging on, Brian.
Bye, everybody.
Absolutely.